Hi everybody! So in this video I'll be talking about some economic concepts that I had a hard time understanding for microeconomics, plus some revision stuff. So it's all simplified in this huge document. Okay, so the first thing I was really confused about was the law of diminishing marginal returns. So this essentially states that adding an additional factor of production, so the FOPs, results in smaller increases in output. So for instance, you're in like a factory where you bake cupcakes, where labor is employed to produce these cupcakes. There comes a stage where the operation reaches its peak efficiency. So you're producing so many cupcakes. But beyond this point, adding more workers while holding other factors constant will lead to less productive operations. If you had 7 people working at with icing, that would probably, decrease your efficiency. Okay, now second one we have here is marginal costs. So marginal costs are the additional costs of producing one more unit of output. So examples could be like the expense of building a new factory, cost of increasing raw materials, expenditure of hiring new workers, cost of installing new machines, and the expense of increasing energy consumption. And let's look at the non-price determinants for demand. So this is income, taste, preferences, future price expectations, price of related goods like substitutes and complements, and number of consumers. And non-price determinants for supply, so change in costs of production, so FOPs, price of related goods, indirect taxes and subsidies, future price expectations, changes in technology, and number of firms. Now let's look at the price mechanism. So this is the system in which the forces of demand and supply determine the prices of products. So here I have a diagram here which kind of shows A going towards C, which is incentivizing, and B going towards C, which is rationing. So number 1 we have is resource allocation, which is kind of like signaling and incentives, like incentivizing people. So signaling is like prices provide information to producers and consumers about where resources are wanted, markets with increasing prices, and where they are not. So incentive is like when prices for a good/service rise, it incentivizes producers to reallocate resources from a less profitable market to this market in order to maximize their profits. Okay. And for number 2, we have rationing. So this means prices ration scarce resources. So when resources becomes scarcer, the price will rise further. Only those who can afford to pay for them will receive them. So if there is a surplus when prices fall and consumers can afford them. So essentially what I'm trying to say here is when it's at A, right, there's an axis of demand. So that's why they would get incentivized to, hey, let me just make it more pricier because why not? And then this is like rationing. They're like, oh no, not a lot of people really want it now. And stuff like that. Okay. Oh no, this is like a lot of people want it. Okay. So, and then let's look at allocative efficiency. So this is when marginal benefit equals marginal cost. So this is a bit different from supply and demand, but you would know if you've been reading your textbooks and stuff, MC is supply and MB is demand. Okay, so rational consumer choice. This one I was really confused about. So the foundation of free markets rests on the idea of rational consumer choice. So according to classic economic theory, being rational means that individuals can assess the consequences of their decisions and understand the overall benefits of each option. So rational decision makers prioritize choices that offer the greatest benefits or utility, happiness towards them. So rational choice theory suggests that people make decisions based on logical and practical reasons that serve their own self-interests. So based on this, we have 3 ideas. Consumer rationality, where the assumption that individuals use rational calculations to make choices which are within their own best interest, using all the information available to them. Number 2, utility maximization. So this means, you want to be satisfied, you want to be happy. That's it. and perfect information. So this is a rational choice theory, assumes information is easily accessible about all goods and services on the market. It assumes that individuals have access to all the information available to make the best decision. So what are the limitations of the assumptions of rational consumer choice? Well, first we have biases, bounded rationality, bounded self-control, bounded selfishness, and imperfect information. So biases, there's 4 kinds of biases that you can note down. And so number 1 is rule of thumb. So this is when people make choices based on their default choice based on experience. So this is like ordering a Frappuccino anytime they order at Starbucks, like the same one. Anchoring bias is when someone relies heavily too much on a certain piece of information that it kind of anchors them in. So framing is like how the presentation of words or wording of information can significantly influence people's choices or judgments. And availability bias. So this occurs when people rely on immediate examples or information that comes to mind. And this could also this also can relate to personal experiences as well. Okay, now bounded rationality. So this theory argues that people make decisions without gathering all the necessary information to make a rational decision with a given period of time. So individuals may not understand the technical jargon linked to selecting insurance or pensions. That's one thing So the theory assumes that rational decision-making is limited because of someone's thinking capacity, availability of information, and a lack of time to, gather all those thoughts and information about it. So this suggests that consumers and businesses do not have enough information to make fully informed decisions and so opt to satisfy. So this means that, they will go for like the second best option. Like satisfies is like, it's okay. If I'm satisfied, then I'm good. So next we have bounded selfishness. So this is a behavioral economic challenge that views economic agents will always act within their own self-interest. So bounded selfishness recognizes that individuals do things for others without a direct reward. Altruism is a practice of acting selflessly, helping others, expecting nothing in return. So this is like donating money to charity, organ donations, and voluntary work. Bounded self-control. This is the theory of bounded self-control. The theory of this suggests that individuals have a limited capacity to regulate their behavior and make decisions in the face of conflicting desires or impulses. Humans are social beings influenced by their family, friends, and social settings, and it could also be based off your human emotions as well. So in reality, consumers are often not rational in their self-control and do not stop consuming, even when it is sensible to stop. They consume even though the price of the good or service exceeds the marginal utility they gain from consumption. We're just a bit stupid like that sometimes. Imperfect information. So now this is a rational choice theory, assumes that information is perfectly accessible. However, this is incorrect due to such factors of intellectual property rights like patents and copyrights and trademarks, cost of accessing information, the sheer amount of information and options available. So this means that people make decisions based on limited information, meaning they may not make the best choice. So this can be like buying secondhand items, like secondhand cars. The seller always has more information than the buyer, so that's imperfect information. Okay, now let's look at business objectives in economics. So the first business objective I have here is profit maximization. So most, rational businesses have the objective of profit maximizing. So they want money. So to achieve this objective, you have to use the profit maximization rule, which is MC equals MR. I always remember as Mr. Mac. So here are the advantages of, profit maximizing. So this is financial stability and growth. Of course, you would have growth in your business if you have abnormal profits because you're getting extra money. And shareholder value enhancement. So concentrating on maximizing profits empowers companies to bolster shareholder value. Okay, this is not super important, but it's good to know. And efficient resource allocation. This is really important. Businesses are motivated to allocate resources effectively, fostering enhanced productivity and better control over costs. Okay, the disadvantages, though, are like the ethical and social considerations. They're trying to maximize profit, so they might overlook aspects like welfare, like the happiness of people. And some of these, like most of these industries, when they try to maximize profit, it might result into negative externalities, and risk of overlooking non-financial measures and short-term profits versus long-term value establishment. Okay, now the second business objective I have here is CSR, corporate social responsibility. So corporate social responsibility involves conducting business activity in an ethical way and balancing the interests of shareholders with those of the wider community. So an approach taken by firms where they attempt to produce responsibly, ethically, towards the community and environment, demonstrating a positive impact to society. So I have a few examples here. So the first example is H&M. So what they're doing is, sustainable sourcing of raw materials and components. That's a responsible activity. So they're using like recycled, old H&M clothing or other brand clothing and sustainable sourced materials. They want to make their clothes out of, recycled materials by 2030. I'm not sure if that's possible. It also publishes a list of the majority of its suppliers' information, which is updated regularly, allowing stakeholders to verify and hold the company responsible for their suppliers' conduct. Okay, another one I have here is Marks & Spencer for responsible marketing. So Marks & Spencer's ensures that it never actively directs any marketing communications to children under the age of 12 and does not directly advertise any products high in fat, sugar, or salt to children under the age of 18. And charities done by so many organizations in the world are a type of CSR. Okay, so advantages of CSR, of course, it enhances business image and your reputation, and it's attractive and can be profitable and adds value to your company and improves employee motivation and productivity, aids in recruitment, and addresses social problems like resource depletion. And disadvantages of CSR is requires significant financial and resource commitments, raises stakeholder expectations, changes in defining and measuring impact, risk of accusations of greenwashing and social washing. Okay, now the third one I have here is satisficing. So this occurs when entrepreneurs endeavor to cover their opportunity costs but do not push themselves significantly further. Even though they might be able to earn higher profits, it is essentially a mix of words like satisfy and suffice. So yeah, they want the satisfactory or acceptable outcomes rather than profit maximization. So they just strive to meet the minimum, requirements or minimum level of standard performance. Okay. So the advantages of this is it could cultivate a well-balanced work-life equilibrium. They could, because you're not like rah, rah, rah all the time, it would just, balance that out. And it diminishes decision-making expenses and accelerates the decision-making processes by necessitating less extensive and time-consuming research compared to the pursuit of optimal profit maximization solutions. So a disadvantage is, of course, potential for mediocrity or suboptimal results. And satisficing may discourage the pursuit of innovation and creative solutions. And satisfactory outcomes is, of course, not that good, and companies risk falling short or higher expectations by consumers. And the last one I have here is business objective, so growth. So certain companies aim for growth as their primary business objective. So growth is basically, done by like maximizing your profits and stuff, but it's also like, boosting your sales revenue and expanding your market share. So market share is a portion of a market controlled by a particular company or product. Okay. Now let's look at elasticities. Elasticities is like the type of topic that I took so long to understand because it's so complicated, but here you go. So PED, price elasticity of demand. So this is a measure of the responsiveness of the quantity demanded of a good or service when its price changes. So the determinants can be like the availability of substitutes, addictiveness of the product, and price of the product as a proportion to income. So the lower the proportion of income the price represents, the lower the PED value would be. Consumers are less responsive to price changes on cheap products. Okay, and time period. In the short term, consumers are less responsive to price increases, resulting in a low value of PED, relatively inelastic. Over a longer period of time, consumers may feel the price increase more and will then look for substitutes, resulting in a higher value of PED. So this would mean that it's relatively elastic. So now let's talk about PED for primary commodities is generally lower than that for manufactured products due to the specific characteristics of these goods. So primary commodities can be anything like raw materials, agricultural things, mineral origin things, fuel, electricity, and water. Okay, and manufactured goods is basically any good that is produced mainly by applying labor and capital to raw materials and other intermediate inputs. So, number one, we have limited substitutes. So primary commodities often lack close substitutes in the short term. So for instance, there are limited alternatives to basic agricultural products like wheat or corn, and as a great example, any kind of fossil fuel. This limits consumers' ability to switch to other products when the price change, resulting in a lower PED. So essentiality of primary commodities. So for example, crude oil is a crucial input in manufacturing, transportation, and energy production. The essential nature of these commodities means that demand is less responsive to changes, leading to a lower PED. And inelastic demand for necessities. So many primary commodities represent necessities rather than luxuries. Consumers typically need these goods regardless of price changes. For example, basic food items like rice or vegetables fall into this category. So the inelastic demand for necessities results in a lower PED. Okay, now let's look at YED. So YED is income elasticity of demand. And like you would think, yes, it means something similar to a measure of responsiveness of the quantity demanded of a good or service when income changes. Okay, so this is a measure, responsiveness in income. Okay, so now let's talk about understanding consumer preferences. So YED helps firms understand how changes in consumer income affect the demand of their products. So for normal goods, a positive YED indicates that demand increases as income rises, while for inferior goods, YED is negative, indicating that demand decreases as income rises. This knowledge allows firms to tailor their marketing strategies and product offerings accordingly. And they could also do some revenue forecasting, product development and diversification, sectoral shifts in the economy, and policy implementations. Okay, now let's look at PES, which is the law of supply. The law of supply states that when there is an increase in price, ceteris paribus, producers will increase the quantity supplied and vice versa. So this essentially measures the responsiveness of quantity supplied of a good or service when a price changes. So let's look here. So the PES for primary commodities is typically lower than that for manufactured products due to several reasons. So these are the reasons here. So production constraints. Primary commodities often face natural constraints such as weather conditions, geographical limitations, and biological growth cycles. So these factors can limit the ability of producers to respond quickly to changes in price. Okay, the production process of primary commodities often requires longer lead times than manufacturing. For example, it takes years for a tree to mature for timber, whereas manufacturing processes can be adjusted relatively quickly. That's why That's why when the quantity supply changes, the price changes, quantity supply is gonna, Okay. Inelastic supply chains and limited sustainability of inputs, storage, and perishability. Okay, and now let's talk about tradable permits. Tradable permits give the holder the right to pollute a certain amount. So to buy permits if emissions increase, and to sell permits if emissions decrease. So they're tradable. So you could trade it with countries. So this is I'm pretty sure most prevalent in the EU, where they can trade these permits, or amongst companies, firms as well. Okay, now we have consumer nudges. So this is the positive reinforcement and indirect suggestions are used to influence the behavior and decision-making of consumers. So this kind of dips into nudge theory, where consumer nudges are designed to guide people towards certain decisions or actions while still allowing them to have freedom of choice. Okay, and now let's talk about the free rider problem. This has to mainly do with common pool resources, but I still added it here. So free riding is considered a failure of the conventional free market system, and this problem occurs when some members of a community fail to contribute their fair share to the costs of a shared resource, but they still use it. So this is just mean. So they just benefit even though they don't contribute. So an example would be like a neighborhood park where the government built it based on people's taxes, through people's taxes and donations and whatnot, but then this person didn't pay their tax, so they didn't really contribute to the park making, but they are still using the park. Okay, now let's look at another form of market failure, which is asymmetric information. So asymmetric information refers to a situation where one party involved in a transaction possesses more or better information than the other party. So this is mostly apparent in examples like the used car market, like car dealerships, where the seller typically has more information about the condition of the car than the buyer. If the seller knows the car has hidden defects but doesn't disclose them to the buyer, it creates an asymmetry of information. The buyer may overpay for the car or unknowingly purchase a vehicle with problems, resulting in an inefficient allocation of resources. So this is really bad. Yeah, it really distorts the socially optimal prices and quantities in markets, resulting in over-provision or under-provision of goods and services. Okay, now let's look at moral hazard and adverse selection, which is based off of asymmetric information. So moral hazard occurs when one party in the transaction is protected from risk, and so they are likely to behave differently than if they were fully exposed to the consequence of the risk. So economic agents take more risks as the other party has limited knowledge of the risks they are taking. So after the 2008 recession, banks continued to make high-risk decisions as they knew the government would bail out if they failed. And moral hazard leads to market failure, as a party will act in their own self-interest, leading to inefficient market outcomes. Adverse selection. So this occurs when the party with more information, typically the buyer, has an advantage in knowing their own risk profile as compared to the party offering the service or product. So this is like in insurance markets, where an adverse selections can occur if individuals with a higher likelihood of making a claim or having a pre-existing condition are more motivated to purchase insurance. So to reduce adverse selections, insurance companies may use various strategies such as risk-based pricing or medical underwriting to ensure that premiums accurately reflect the risk profile of the insured person. Responses to asymmetric information. So governments can respond through legislation and regulation and provision of information. So legislation and regulation is basically laws, like enforced laws. So they can limit the use of demerit goods, clear legal sanctions such as fines and bans. This can lead to more illegal activity though, because that's a bad thing. It's a black market thing, and higher costs in general. So the government provides additional information about goods or services. So this is provision of information, such as food manufacturers provide information about nutritional content on food packaging. They can mandate that as a requirement for food industries. Okay, so private responses. So this is like signaling and screening. So signaling, this is a strategy used by firms and individuals with private information to convey that information to others. It is useful in situations where one party has superior information about their characteristics and qualities. They may use signals to communicate this information to others. Okay. Screening is another method to tackle unfair selection, is to provide buyers with the opportunity to screen out biased, inaccurate, or misleading information to make better purchasing decisions. So buyers may employ screening mechanisms to assess the quality of reliability of sellers. Okay, now finally let's get into the super hard stuff of microeconomics. Well, this was what I thought like last year. Okay, now let's look at market structures, which are the characteristics of the market in which a firm or industry operates. So the characteristics typically include the number of buyers, the size of firms, the type of product, whether it's homogeneous or differentiated, the types of barriers to entry and exit, the degree of competition between the firms in the market. So market power refers to a firm's ability to influence and control the conditions in a specific market, allowing it to significantly impact price, output, and other market variables. Okay, perfect competition, this is perfect competition. So many firms, free entry, homogeneous products. So again, small firms, many small firms, low barriers to entry, homogeneous products, so identical, perfect knowledge, and price takers. What I mean by price takers is that they do not set the price. They do not have the market power to set the price. They don't have the ability to do that. That's why they're a price taker. They will just, sell things at the given price. Okay, so they produce at a profit maximization level, which is MCMR, Mr. Mac, and the firm is productively efficient at MCAC. So MCAC, when it's MCAC, that means it's productively efficient. And it's allocatively efficient when it's AR equals MC, MC equals AR, AR equals MC. Yes. Okay, so let's talk about supernormal or abnormal profits. So a perfectly competitive firm will make abnormal profits in the short run, but not in the long run. They would just make normal profits in the long run. Okay, so the firms in perfectly competitive markets aim to profit maximize at MC equals MR. And perfectly competitive firms are also price takers and therefore have a horizontal demand curve, as you can see from above right here. And number 4, initially the new agent will be the only firm in the market or local area. So this will allow firms to make supernormal profits in the short run due to a lack of competition. Okay, now let's talk about perfect competition in the long run. Well, they make normal profits. Okay, when it's like this, it would go like above this line. You see how this is below the line and this is like the profit? This would go above the line, so there would be like it would be just straight and no boxes to color in. So that's basically what normal competition is like. And now let's talk about losses. So losses is when AC, average cost curve, is above this line like this, and that means you can draw a little box here, which indicates the loss. Okay, as you can see, they produce more. The price is. Yeah, it's more than P1, so that's a loss. Okay, at this level of output, AR is less than AC. You can see that. AR is, because AR is average revenue, but that's your average cost, and your average cost is above your average revenue. So, of course, you're going to be making a loss. Okay, and the loss is equivalent to this box right here, so it would be like P1, like C1 minus P1, either way is fine, and then times Q1. Okay. So you could see that the firm is initially producing at a profit maximizing level of MC equals MR. Which is like here. Don't look at that one. Okay, here you could see that at first when it was at P1, this firm was making a loss. As you can see, this firm was making a loss, and its supply curve was at S1. But because, they brought up the price because, since everyone was making a loss, everyone's like, no, I'm leaving this market. I hate it here. Like, it's so, like, no one's paying me and I'm just making a loss, right? So because that happens, prices go up and it goes back to normal profits again. So it's like, boop, and then it goes boop. So that's basically it. I hope that made sense. Okay. So a monopoly. So this is a single or dominant firm with high barriers to entry and no close substitutes. So nature of the product, it's unique. Degree of efficiency, really high. Customer loyalty, high. Type of profit, abnormal. Price maker or price taker? Price maker, they set the price themselves. Level of market power, absolute. They have so much market power. Barriers to entry, extreme, because they have so much power to, stop people from entering. Slope of the demand curve is steepest. It is inelastic. Number of firms, no competitors, no substitutes. Well, at least no super close substitutes. Okay, so in a monopoly market, normal profit refers to the profit level necessary to keep the monopolist in the market in the long run. So it represents the minimum amount of profit needed to cover the opportunity cost of the resources used by the monopolist. Okay, so this is when it's making a normal profit, when AC is touching the AR curve. Okay. Yes, and here, right here, when AC is below the AR curve, that is when they're making abnormal profits, because average revenue is greater than average cost. If you do simple mathematics there, you would understand that when average revenue is higher than average cost, of course you will have some money left over. But here, when average revenue is the same as average cost, you would understand, hey, okay, that's just normal profits. There's no additional profits there. And here are the benefits of monopolies. So they can employ and benefit from the economies of scale, which is a cost advantage experienced by a firm when it increases its output level. So monopolies become more efficient when they utilize economies of scale, because they can earn more profits and do so really efficiently. And second one is investments. A monopoly earns enough profits to allow it to reinvest a percentage of its profits to become more efficient. R&D. They're large, so they can spend money. Innovation. They have knowledge, expertise, and finance to innovate successfully. Disadvantages would be that there would be less choice for consumers, since the monopoly dominates the market, leaving consumers with fewer choices due to a lack of competition. And higher prices, since they can make their own price, they can set it as high as they want, or they can set it as low as they want. Okay, and due to a lack of competition, it may be inefficient. Okay, now let's look at the perfect competition and the monopoly market. So they're both different. They're separated to the left and the right. So perfect competition is on the left. You can see the profit maximization level is MC equals MR, Mr. Mac. And the firm is productively efficient at MC equals AC. MC equals AC. Okay, that's when it's productively efficient. And it's allocatively efficient when AR equals MC. When AR equals MC, there is no welfare loss. Okay, good. And monopoly, the profit maximization level, again, is MC equals MR. MC equals MR. And the firm is not productively efficient as AC is less than MC. Yes? Okay. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, it's not productively efficient because AC is greater than MC. Oh my goodness, sorry for that. AC is greater than MC. So that's not productively efficient, because it's productively efficient when it's MC equals AC. Okay, and you can see it's not allocatively efficient as well, because AR is greater than MC. AR is greater than MC, because allocative efficiency would be AR equals MC. And unlike this firm right here, unlike the perfectly competitive firm, it has a welfare loss of ADF. So AD and an F is probably here. ADF, this triangle right here. Okay, so the advantages and disadvantages of using monopoly power, So firms, I'm going to talk in the terms of stakeholders. So firms, an advantage is abnormal profits, and market power enables them to increase its global competitiveness and economies of scale, and producer surplus increases. So disadvantages is lack of competition, reduced incentives, cross-subsidization can create inefficiency, and monopolies lead to a misallocation of resources since P is greater than MC. Okay. And the price is above the opportunity cost of providing goods due to lack of competition. Innovation might lack sometimes. And for employees, the advantage is, abnormal profits equals higher wages, and disadvantage is having one supplier in the industry limits the opportunity to change employers. Okay, consumers, product innovation due to firms' abnormal profits may result in better quality products. Cross-subsidization can lower prices on some products that a firm provides, and prices may fall if firms pass on their cost savings. Another disadvantage is a lack of competition is likely to result in higher prices as no substitute goods are available. A lack of competition may result in no product innovation and stuff like that. And now let's talk about natural monopoly. So this is occurs when the most efficient number of firms in the industry is one. This is usually like railway, train station kind of deals. So yeah, it uses its ability of economies of scale to lower prices for consumers. It makes sense to have one firm building 5 nuclear power stations as opposed to 5 firms, as average cost will be lower than with one firm producing. Yeah, that's why like railway stations and whatnot. Okay, now you could look at this to just memorize. Okay, now let's look at the market structure, where there are a few large firms that dominate the market. So most markets are imperfectly competitive. So most imperfectly competitive industries operate in an oligopoly market structure. So this is like banks, insurance companies, department stores, supermarkets, petrol retailers, and sports stores. So market power refers to the ability of a firm to influence and control the conditions in a specific market, allowing them to have significant impact on price, output, and other market variables. So advantages of an oligopoly is price stability. So this brings advantages to consumers and dynamic efficiency. They can make abnormal profits as well. The abnormal profits gained may allow them to invest into innovation and R&D and greater choice and better quality products. Disadvantages are the higher price, lower output, allocative and productive inefficiency, less consumer choice, decision-making bias, and deliberate barriers to entry. Okay, now oligopolies sometimes can have collusive behavior or non-collusive behavior. So collusive behavior in oligopolies occurs when firms cooperate to fix prices and restrict output. So they're being nasty. So they cease to compete as vigorously as they can, and the incentive to collude is high. So non-collusive behavior in oligopolies occurs when firms actively compete to maintain or increase market share. So they can do this through like price wars, but then little is like gained. Like you end up making a loss if you generate a price war. Okay, so there's 2 types of collusive activity. So that's tacit collusion. So this is like the type of collusion that's unspoken, quiet, hidden agreements between 2 parties. So they are often implicit agreements that are extremely difficult for competition authorities to approve, and it is illegal. And the second one is overt collusion. Overt means open or spoken collusion between firms, so they will both be aware of each other's price and output decisions and adjust accordingly to maximize profits. So this type of collusion is easier to detect and is also illegal. So now let's talk about them a bit more. So overt collusion occurs when firms explicitly agree to limit competition and raise prices. So a cartel is the most restrictive form of collusion and is illegal in most countries. So the consequences of overt collusion include higher prices, less output, poor quality products, less investment, and innovation. And it often happens in the following ways. So price fixing, so you fix a certain price. Setting output quotas, agreements to block firms new firms agreements to pay suppliers the same price. And now we have tacit collusion occurs when firms avoid formal agreements but closely monitor each other's behavior, usually following the lead of the largest firm in the industry. So this is the most common form of tacit collusion. The most common form is the price leadership. So this occurs when firms monitor the price of the largest firm in the industry and adjust their prices to match them. So it's difficult for regulators to prove that collusion has occurred because, it's like really secretive. And it provides similar benefits to firms as overt collusion, but perhaps not to the same degree. Okay. Now let's talk about game theory. I'm almost done. So game theory is a mathematical framework which is used by firms to ensure optimal decisions are made in strategic setting where there is a high level of interdependence, such as in oligopoly markets. So it's illustrated using the model called the prisoner's dilemma. So it just shows the strategies and payoffs available to the prisoners, like presented in a payoff matrix. So for example, here we have two firms. We have McDonald's and Burger King. So if McDonald's advertises and Burger King doesn't advertise, McDonald's gains $5 billion while Burger King only gains $1 billion. And if McDonald's and Burger King chooses to advertise, they would get $2 billion. But if they were, being collusive in their activity and they're like, hey, let's just both don't advertise, then they could gain $3 billion. But most of the time, the game would usually fall in this square right here. Okay, now let's talk about firms in an oligopoly market engage in 3 types of price competition. So the first one is price wars. So this is when competitors repetitively lower prices to undercut each other. So it occurs when there is a lower level of non-price competition. It makes them kind of difficult to collude. And predatory pricing is practice of lowering prices when a new competitor joins. It kind of drives them out. It's a strategy that is really, really illegal and is anti-competitive. And limit pricing. So firms set a limit on how high the price will go in the industry, and a lower price reduces profit and disincentivize other firms from joining the industry. So market power and monopolistic competition, which is the last one, and it's a market structure. A monopolistic market structure is one in which there are many firms offering a similar product but with some product differentiation. So this can include like nail salons, hairdressing, barbershops, massage parlors, and fruit and veggie stores. Okay, now let's look at the characteristics of monopolistic competition. So the nature of the product, well, it's slightly differentiated. It's not completely, but it's slightly. And degree of efficiency, it can be allocatively efficient in the long run, and it's more competition pushes the firm to better efficiency. So that's a good thing. And customer loyalty, it's kind of low because there's a lot of substitutes, and the type of profit, they can make abnormal profits, but in the long run, it would be normal because of the break-even price. And they can set the prices sometimes, but sometimes they can't. So it's kind of like price setting abilities. So they have some. Barriers to entry are low. So you could easily leave and you could easily start. So number of firms. So there are quite a number of firms, but they're like usually small ones. Okay, and level of market power is quite low as well, not as much as monopolies and oligopolies. And slope of demand is shallow, it's elastic, and same shape as monopoly revenue. They all, like oligopolies, competitive monopolies and monopolies all basically have the same looking diagram, except it has to do with steepness. But if you generally draw the idea, then you're fine. Okay, that's it for my video. Thank you for watching.